You have to go the way your blood beats. If you don't live the only life you have, you won't live some other life. You won't live any life at all. James Baldwin. Bending, Not Breaking. Pride and Avatar. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. I am your host, Ben Pruitt, and I have had such a lovely time engaging the Dragon Prince this past week. And I am really just eager to discuss Pride in the Avatarverse now. We had amazing guests, and I am truly grateful for Jesse, Rena, and Devin. And as we move forward into Avatar, you'll recognize several of our guests from previous episodes and some new guests as well. But I want to be clear, it is Pride Month, and we are celebrating full force by bringing you a lot of Pride content. So over the past week, we released 3 episodes in 1 week, and we are planning to offer you the same this week, all centered on Avatar content. So we will be releasing episodes with discussions about our favorite Pride scenes, our ships, our moments, our headcanons, all in celebration of Pride Month. Now, these episodes don't follow the usual routine, but I am certain that you will enjoy them. There are some other things accessible to patrons that I will say as well that we will be offering and have offered. Some of those have been videos of the conversations we have had with our previous guests, and will continue to do so moving forward. So I hope you'll consider supporting us on Patreon to access those cool perks, in addition to many more that we offer. And I hope you'll consider giving us a glowing review, or both. Both is good. I love both. Both is awesome. That being said, remember you can find our content on BNB_pod on all the social medias. But without further ado, it is time to listen and head on over to our guests. So let's head there, and we'll be discussing Pride and the Avatar. Our first guest is going to be a returning guest that you all know and love and care about. Cameron Feuerhelm is back in action, and we are glad you are here. How are you today, Cameron?
Yay, returning champion. I feel great.
Returning champion, yes.
It's Pride Month. I have a haircut tomorrow. Things are good.
Yes, all good things. I love feeling like we're nice and on fleek with our hair. I desperately need a haircut myself. I might have to schedule one.
I support that. I support that endeavor.
Awesome. Well, it's been a while since you've been on, because we've just haven't been putting out as many episodes on the main feed. So how have you been? What's new for you?
Not a whole lot new. I've been, my husband and I recently bought a house, so we've been kind of dealing with a whole lot of that.
Nice.
Yeah. And it love it. Looks great now. But we've been doing a lot of home improvement stuff for the last few months. So that's pretty much what's consumed my entire life. Along with trying to maintain, friendships, relationships, all that stuff.
Turns out adulting's kind of hard. Weird.
So no one told you life was gonna be this way.
Yeah. You know what I did last night? This is embarrassing because I knew about this and then forgot about this, but
this is a safe space.
Yeah, there's a reservoir under your washing machine that you're supposed to empty fairly regularly. And there's a little thing where you open it. I was like, oh my goodness, I realized I haven't done that since I moved into this house. And so it was like I opened it and pulled out the little hose and opened it, and then I started to throw up because of the smell. And so
Ben,
it's bad.
I didn't know that there even was a reservoir under the washing machine that you're supposed to clean out. You are blowing my mind, and
Yep.
now I'm afraid to check my own washing machine.
Yeah, you're supposed to do that like once a month. So, funny story. Yikes! It's a big yikes. It smelled a little bit like death, but that's a little too high. So,
I'm so afraid to check my washing machine, but now I have to.
Yeah. But enough of the embarrassing moments for the home improvement house things. Instead, we're gonna.
Yeah, all that to say, hi everybody. My name's Cameron. My pronouns are he and his. And
thank you. That's perfect.
This is Bending Not Breaking.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you again for reintroducing yourself. Can you remind the people who may have forgotten, since or rather, let's address our new listeners instead. But can you just tell our new listeners a little bit more about you and what's your relationship with Avatar?
So I watched Avatar as it was airing, which was kind of nuts. I cannot imagine what a lovely feeling it is to be able to binge watch Avatar and not have to try and keep up with continuity on a Nickelodeon afternoon and hope you catch the right episodes in the right order. And so that was kind of my experience. It was my I caught it, by chance after school when I should have been doing homework, and then immediately tried to find the rest of it to watch, DVDs and such back then. And I caught, episodes live. And then Korra, same kind of thing. As soon as I heard there was an Avatar spinoff, I was following the news cycles around it. I was staying on top of who was cast and what the premise was going to be. And I was really excited for that. Watched all of that live, even when Nickelodeon shuffled it off to nick.com and, all of that happened. I watched every episode week to week. And I'm huge into geek culture and a whole bunch of franchises. Avatar is one of them that I care very deeply about.
I love it. There's one of our other guests was talking about this, and I interviewed them before I interviewed you, but you're going to be first, so it's fine. They were talking about how they watched Korra live, but they found Avatar first, and then that's what got them hooked onto Korra.
Nice.
So I'm jealous of all of you who got to watch everything live and really just enjoy it all as it was coming out. I remember I had a camper at summer camp who had shaved their head to have an arrow on top of their head, and they came to camp and I was like, why is your hair like that? And I had no idea what it was back in the day because I had never seen the show. And I was like,
oh my gosh,
like an interesting phenomenon. And looking back, I'm like, I want to go hang out with that camper. Where where are they? But so
yeah, time for a reunion, just so you can find throw a camp reunion just to find that person.
Right? Yeah. Oh, well, that brings us to kind of my next question for you. Our episode today is about Pride, right? Because it's June, it's Pride Month, and we're excited and we're thrilled to kind of be a part of this movement and share information and share stories. And I want to ask you kind of explicitly, what is your relationship with Pride and what does it kind of mean to you?
Sure. So I am a gay man, and so my relationship to Pride is very, it's personal to me. It matters, and I feel a little bit of complications around my relationship with Pride, which we can talk about later, as far as what the Pride, what Pride has become to a lot of companies and things like that. But as far as what Pride is about and where it started, I feel like a deep connection to that. And I feel like it's super important for queer youth and just queer people generally to have a space, a moment in time annually. I mean, preferably daily, but at the very least 1 month a year where they feel like they can see that they matter.
At minimum 1 month a year. It seems like that's
right.
You only matter 1 month a year is frankly
right. It's that double-edged sword of I imagine it's very similar to how some people feel around Black History Month, that like, well, Black history is always important, and that is true. Queer history is always important. Like, everyone is important all the time.
Yeah.
Everyone's experience is valid. We just
Yeah.
have the month of June to, buy merchandise.
Yeah. Which, is nice. It's nice to have merchandise from our, brands we stand, that are.
As a designer, I have to get, I can't buy all of it because sometimes rainbows are not cute. Like just throwing a rainbow on something, not always the best idea. But when it's done really well, I fully endorse it.
Here. I will second that. That's that sounds lovely. Okay, so we've talked about you, and now I want you to talk about what moment in the Avatarverse or scene or ship or anything that you want to center on that relates to Pride that we want to kind of focus our time on moving forward.
Sure. To people that know me, it will come as no surprise that I wasn't able to pick just one. I had one all lined up, ready to go, took my notes, watched the episode and everything. And then I was stuck in traffic on the way home to get on this call to record with you. And I had this like brainwave of another moment. So I have two that I really want to talk about, but I think it is going to be better to start, because we've kind of already touched on this. I'll start with my spontaneous realization one, which is a moment that really struck me. I remember when it was airing, and especially, during this particular month of June, in The Legend of Korra, they have the pro bending team, the Fire Ferrets, which is Korra, Bolin, and Mako, and they get sponsored by Future Industries. It's the only reason they're allowed to keep competing, because it's a big entry fee and all of this stuff. And Asami really helps them out by getting her dad to sponsor them. And I get spoilers for season 1 of Legend of Korra, but it turns out that Hiroshi Sato, Asami's father, is anti-bender, and like very much he's part of the equalist movement, and he like bankrolls them, and he's their like tech inventor guy that kind of helps the equalists combat benders. So that strikes me during Pride Month, in that this idea that corporations will throw a rainbow on things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they support you, and you have to be very careful with who you trust, who you decide to throw your patronage behind as a consumer, and also just consumer culture generally. Yeah. So that was what really struck me.
There's so much there that is just really incredible. And I love that you're pointing us to this moment where Hiroshi is essentially using this as a way to create a front, right? It's
exactly.
And I think that it's the using that feels dirty, right? It's the facade of I care, but I'm going to use all of the money and bankroll and a recognition that you give me to subvert everything that you're trying to do.
Right.
And
which feels very prescient in, obviously in Pride Month generally, where, you have people throwing their, edited rainbow logos on their social media channels for the US and the UK, but then you have, other countries where their logo is very much standard, and they do not talk about Pride, and they do not talk so how deep does the support really go? And, what causes are these companies donating to? And are they genuinely, I think it gets at, allyship versus performative allyship on the most base level.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think is really worth visiting, is that's why the term ally is not something that people can claim. It's something that is conferred, and it can also be removed. It can be taken away, right? And so it's something that people are given rather than people that can claim. And I think that that's a really good example of, like, I just had a complete left turn in my head. I was thinking about Chick-fil-A now. So thinking about
Ooh, let's follow that thread.
You also know what companies aren't putting up Pride logos based off their history, right? And Chick-fil-A is one, and where they have a very, very not healthy relationship with Pride. In fact,
yeah, with the community as a whole.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, they're the most positive thing I can say about them is they at least they don't pretend.
Right. Yeah.
That is the most positive thing I can say about that versus a company that will, throw out a Pride themed burger, but not necessarily there. Again, it's all about where the money actually goes.
Yeah. And I think an example of this that is not to do with Pride, but has to do with just race relations is Walmart came out with a Juneteenth flavored ice cream. And if that doesn't make you cringe, then I don't know what will, because that's.
Do you know how many people had to approve that? That
right?
went through so many people, and nobody thought, maybe we should take a minute. Let's feel out the pulse on this.
To be fair, it was pulled very quickly once it reached public, but it's one of those things where that just marks what's important in your leadership. Why don't you have people of color in your leadership that are vetting that as hey, don't be dumb?
For a company like Walmart, I'm pretty sure we know exactly why they don't have anybody like that in the room. Speaking of, Juneteenth and all this stuff, you see this co-opting of social justice very frequently. I mean, you saw it on a large scale in 2020 with, when our country, the United States, was grappling with racial justice, for a minute before everyone, I guess, moved on. But a lot of companies did what we see a lot of in June for Pride, which is changing their logos on social media. They will, engage with and share content from creators of that community. But it's not, once the fad or the craze has passed or Pride Month is over, what have they done that is meaningful and impactful? And I think to get back to Avatar a little bit, Hiroshi really didn't do much except pay the Fire Ferret's entry fee, and then they had to be walking billboards for him. They had to wear the Future Industries logo, and showing 3 big important vendors on a platform like that wearing the Future Industries logo, like they're like NASCAR drivers, and so that's where that connection got me.
And I think the word that comes to mind for this is integrity, which is, in thinking about the difference between professed values and practiced values. And to have integrity is to have those two things aligned. And what we're seeing with these companies is there's a lack of integrity, right? And so that's the nature of the capitalism, right? Where we are seeing the problem of capitalism in this very relationship with Pride, right? We are going to use the rainbow to have more people buy our product. And so it's only using the rainbow logo as a means to achieve more money. And none of that money is being used in the practiced value. It's only the professed value. And I think that's what you were talking about earlier when you said there's a difference between these companies who slap on a logo and who are actually spending money and donating to causes. And I think that's just so important. And we see that Hiroshi is a prime example of what that shouldn't look like.
Exactly. Hiroshi is, for all intents and purposes, it seems that Future Industries is the Disney or the Tesla of the Avatar universe.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a bigger question, but is that kind of representation and that kind of allyship better than none at all? Is performative, rainbow capitalism more beneficial than if they didn't for example, what like Chick-fil-A does, which is do not acknowledge Pride in any way, and not like I don't know. I feel like I can't speak for anybody but myself when I say that I don't know what it would have meant to me as a kid to see even the most performative, cynical gestures that we see from companies around Pride.
Yeah, I think for me, and again, I'm only coming from my perspective, I think that it is better than nothing and it is not enough. It is both at once, right?
Right.
Like I would rather someone have a rainbow logo for a little while than never, right? And because I think that even that alone is let me reshift that. I think that when companies can make money off of Pride, I think it shows
Yeah.
companies that this is important, because I think that our dollars are just as much of a vote as voting at the poll. And so when we spend money at Chick-fil-A during Pride Month, when they don't have Pride, what we're saying is we don't care. When we spend money at somewhere that does have a Pride logo, what we're saying is, hey, this matters to me. And so I think where we spend our money matters. And just because, these massive corporations are choosing to do this, I don't think like it's one of those things where like I'm gonna not spend money there because they're putting up a pride flag. I think that's
Yeah.
counterintuitive, right? It's no.
Right.
I think we don't spend money if they're putting up a pride flag and they're actively harming the community.
Definitely.
And sometimes people just don't know, so that's why you said this earlier, but it's important to know your stuff and know your research and know the background of these companies that you're spending your money at which you're spending your money.
I was having this discussion with a friend of mine the other day about, it. Oh, well, if you look hard enough, everybody donates to something problematic. And so you just really shouldn't buy anything. And I was like, I feel like that's a real gross oversimplification that,
Agreed.
yeah, may help you feel better at the end of the day about you still wanting that Chick-fil-A sandwich. But like, I don't think in the world that we're in, there are companies that you can support that do not do active harm with their money, at least to marginalized communities.
And I think what's problematic about that is, frankly, it is more expensive to spend money at those locations often, right? Because
Yeah.
buying things at Amazon is so cheap, and it is a very predatory business, but people can't afford not to. And I
Right.
think that acknowledging that is also a part of the problem, right? Where Walmart and Amazon and all of these huge companies that are able to get things for like unreasonably cheap make it so that we don't really have a choice to spend money anywhere else if we're on this low income spectrum. And so
Right.
supporting locally owned businesses that are BIPOC owned and proud to be prideful and like all of these
Yep.
things cost more. And I think that that's the sacrifice that a lot of us are really struggling with, is that it's hard to spend more money when this cheaper option is available. But
That's the thing. Yeah, what Amazon sells is not, anything on their marketplace. What they sell is convenience and shipping. Like that.
Yeah.
That's what they sell. That is their product at the end of the day. That's why you go to Amazon before you go to local brick and mortar small business. The accessibility and the convenience, like the quick shipping, the all-in-one kind of marketplace idea, and the fact that you can do it all on your phone.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing to, it's tough to do the work. It's tough to do the research and find out who you can support and where your money's going. That is work. But at the end of the day, it's important to do that work. And as we see, Mako, Korra, and Bolin eventually do discover where Hiroshi's loyalties lie. And, they don't maintain, help me to remember, in season 2, they are still the future industry's fire ferrets, aren't they? Because Hiroshi is ousted and Asami takes over. And
I think that's true. I don't know that I paid attention, honestly. I think I want to go rewatch now. That's
So they don't, they don't boycott their corporate sponsor. They accept better leadership and promises of being better with that money going forward. So that was the first, that was actually my second scene that I was struck by. And it's such an important conversation that I will continue to have and to hear people on, because I'm so fascinated, particularly with the idea of okay representation versus no representation versus shallow, like all those kind of facets. That's what strikes me the most about this whole thing. And then, so my initial thoughts as far as a Pride moment in Avatar, in the Avatarverse, comes from the first series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, season 2, the episode Tales of Ba Sing Se, specifically the Toph and Katara vignette that is part of that episode. And that's the one, to sum up real quick for people that may not have watched it in a while, or that only watched the Iroh story, because that's the really, really, really that's the memorable one from this episode. But yeah, exactly. So Toph and Katara, it's like a spa day for them, essentially. They go, the episode opens with the gang kind of grooming themselves in the mirror, getting ready for the day. Aang is shaving his head, Sokka is shaving his face, and Katara is like doing her hair loopies. And then it cuts to Toph, who is just like covered in a layer of dirt, hair is a mess. She like spits into a spittoon at some point. It's all very comedically presented. And Katara decides that the girls are gonna have a spa day. And Toph, throughout the episode, she gets primped and pampered a little bit, and at the end of the episode, she's got makeup on and she feels really pretty. And some girls walk by and make some kind of snide Regina George-ish comment about her makeup, and then Katara and Toph send them into the river. So that's the little button on the episode. And it's a really, it can be very surface level, but my favorite thing about the Tales of Ba Sing Se generally is that they're all about character. This big plot that's happening, at the corruption in Ba Sing Se and the politics all stops to have these moments to push our characters forward and show a little bit more about them. Yeah, exactly. And it's, it's what the beach does for the villains in season 3. It's that kind of idea of what makes these people tick. And so particularly what strikes me about this vignette is gender norms, and more specifically, Toph's performative bravado and her performative. As the episode goes on, you see that this layer of sarcasm and more traditionally masculine traits and actions that she wraps herself in is a bit of a performance. She expresses to Katara at the end of the episode that she does enjoy feeling pretty, that she does like this. And this moment was so important to me. It struck me, it's definitely one of the first times that I can remember seeing gender norms examined like this on a children's network. By the time that I was watching Avatar live, like I had seen The Birdcage or Victor Victoria that challenged gender in very different ways, but this was the first time I had seen media that is mostly designed for children target this idea, explore this idea of gender norms and performative aspects of that.
So I'm hearing from you that from your perspective, Toph in everyday life is performing like more masculine traits when there is this desire almost to feel pretty and live into more feminine traits. Is that what I'm hearing, just to kind of relabel that?
I feel personally that it was more that she recognizes, what my read on this is, she recognizes that she cannot do femininity in the same way that a Katara or somebody like that can. She will never be completely at home in that kind of world because of who she is as a person. So she instead goes completely the other direction.
Yeah. And it's just, and I think what's notable there is that there's choice there, right, in how you perform gender. And what we're seeing is due to what I imagine is probably disability, right? Toph's inability to see plays a role in this, right? I can't see, I don't know what makeup does and looks like. I don't, nor do I care because I can't see it. And so,
yeah, and I can't really apply it myself. Like,
yeah. So it's interesting to me to think about how, because the nature of Toph's identity affects how she chooses to dress and how she chooses to perform gender. And so,
well, and that she views it as so binary that if you can't be feminine, then you must be this. And I think it's important. I mean, it was now that I think back on it, it's kind of a commentary on the fact that you can do multiple things and you can have a spectrum. And I know that for me, I, as a little gay boy, performed masculinity a lot in an attempt to avoid bullying and like physical harm to myself. I performed a lot of more traditionally masculine behavior, and it's one of the things that I think I'm proudest of myself is that I can embrace this idea that anyone can like anything. It is a spectrum. There's not just masculine behavior or feminine behavior, but you can paint your nails and play football or what. Like there's all this kind of stereotypes that we're breaking down as we evolve as a society, that I think this episode kind of touches on. And maybe not intentionally, but that's what I get.
I love that. And I think what we see this show play with gender performance less explicitly than it is done in this episode. And I think we see, Korra is very has a lot of masculine qualities. We see Aang has a lot of feminine qualities. There's a lot of gender fluidity that we see that makes these characters so lovely, that without a lens of paying attention to gender, you don't necessarily notice unless you are stuck in a real
Kyoshi defies a lot of gender norms.
Yes, absolutely. So what does it say about Toph then, from your perspective, that Toph is performing masculinity to a point, and then we see her soften over the course of this episode? Literally, her voice changes and it gets quieter and softer. We see her adapt to, she starts to wear makeup. She's like this whole shift to, but I also enjoy this. And I'm just curious, like, what does it mean to you to see that on screen?
Like I kind of touched on a little bit, it was one of the first times I remember seeing this idea of, now I have the words to describe it, but at the time I didn't. Now I can say that, it does touch on this idea of gender as a spectrum of behaviors, that, behaviors do not necessarily, like, behaviors are not gendered inherently. We have gendered them. And, likes and dislikes and hobbies are not gendered, but we have gendered them. And I think this episode really, this moment for Toph really touches on that for me. And it reminds me that, like, I guess this is a little bit of a separate point, but she was sheltered. She was literally just locked away from society, and the village had no idea she existed. Like, it was a rumor that the Beifong family even had a daughter at all. And that to me also kind of speaks to this idea that queer people often experience, which is, okay, well, just don't put it in my face. Don't, like, you don't need to be so loud or be so vocal or be so, like, you don't need to be in my face, quote unquote, with your preferences, quote unquote, is what these kind of people tend to say.
It's the notion of, I'm going to tolerate this, but I'm not quite at the point where I can accept this.
Which is, and I think to Toph's parents' credit, and most I'll speak to my own experience. To Toph's parents' credit, they were doing it because they fear for her safety. Now, I don't think it was the right course of action, but it was motivated by love. My parents, I am very blessed to have a family that is very supportive of my queerness. And you know, like my parents are those people that you give out hugs at pride celebrations, you know. But when I wasn't out, when I was a kid, I was still very, I was still pretty obviously queer in some kind of fashion. I have gay voice. I did a lot of things that are traditionally feminine. I was very interested in like female pop music, and I really wanted to paint my nails and like all this stuff that marked me very obviously as gay for me personally, but they're not inherently gay traits either. And my parents were very concerned for my safety. Not that they don't, it wasn't ever motivated by, we don't feel this is right, but they indirectly, their concern for my safety indirectly encouraged me to perform masculinity, to put on this mask and hide different aspects of myself for my own safety, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously that's not as extreme as what Toph's parents have done, but it's that kind of idea to hide this person to keep them safe.
Well, and I think that is worth naming in terms of phobia, right? In terms of fear. And so in this case, it's not necessarily fear of, right? Literal fear of, being my child is gay. I'm scared that my child is gay. It's I'm scared what will happen because my child is gay. And that's still a type of
fear
phobia,
of the
right?
societal response. Yeah.
Right. And so I think labeling like homophobia and being clear about when we talk about what is homophobic, this is a response that is homophobic, and not in the sense of like I hate. It's the difference between calling someone like, hey, you're a racist, and also like this racism exists in our world and it is systemic and it is bigger than us, right? And hey, you're a homophobe versus this is rooted in homophobic behavior, right? And rooted in homophobia. And thinking about how we can label that and really address it is a pretty important aspect to think about. So I appreciate you kind of lifting up this distinction between the two. Oh, wow, this has been a really fruitful conversation. No pun intended.
Wow. I do have one last thing I want to say about this section of this episode,
please.
And it'll be quick, but the moment where the mean girls are immediately able to cut in on Toph's joy and her vulnerability when she is like finally expressing that like, oh, I do feel pretty. Oh, I do see the appeal of like this kind of this. I do see the appeal of this side of human behavior. And the mean girls make one comment and it's immediate. You could just see it. And kudos to the animators, kudos to Jessie Flower for performing this. It's just a beautiful moment where she just gets very soft and very quiet, and she's just like, they can't hurt me, I know who I am. But you feel the hurt, like you feel it, you see it, you feel it. And of course that's why we enjoyed the moment where Toph and Katara send these girls into the river, because like they're not hurt, but they are wet and their makeup is ruined and their hair is ruined and their clothes are ruined.
Win.
What I would have given to send my elementary school bullies into a river with bending.
And again, it speaks to the power of words, right? And how what we say matters, but also having literal power, the ability to bend and to defend yourself also matters, right? And when people have neither, right, neither the language nor the physical power and ability to do something, we see that oppression turn into mental health issue and really unfortunate responses that way. And that's why so many mental health risks are significantly higher among the queer community. So I thank you for kind of pointing us in that direction too. Wow. Okay, so we've had a lovely conversation about all kinds of stuff now.
Yeah.
I want to kind of venture into this kind of final segment of our episode, which is I would love to hear and focus our, you know how we end on gratitude, and hearing one character in the Avatarverse that you're thankful for. And it might be from this scene, it might be from the whole Avatarverse at large, but maybe I'll stop there. Who is someone that you are grateful for from the Avatarverse in light of our conversation today?
In light of our conversation today, I am grateful for Asami Sato.
Okay.
And I'm grateful for her because, as we kind of talked about, and gosh, I hope we're not mistaken on this, but in season 2, the Fire Ferrets keep the Future Industries branding, and we see that Asami is in charge of the company now, and presumably, as far as we see in the show, trying to be better and do better with the money, with the power, with her company, with what their company is doing.
Yeah, the integrity of their business practices.
Right.
I love it. Wow. I'm grateful for Asami too. That's just Asami's gonna
for so many reasons, but that one specifically today.
Yeah, here. Okay, well, this has been a lovely episode with you, just to kind of break down and learn.
Wait, who are you grateful for?
Oh, I haven't been sharing with all these recordings, but I guess I can share quickly. I think in light of our conversation today, I am grateful that Katara was willing to take Toph on this adventure and let her explore this different side of herself that she hasn't had an opportunity to explore, because I'm sure that there were people who wanted to do this for her at the Beifong estate. I'm sure her parents was like, let me dress you up really pretty, and she was just like, I don't want to deal with this because it wasn't worth it. But for some reason she said yes to Katara. We don't see her wearing makeup when Aang finds her in her Beifong dress on the estate, right? We don't see that on her face. But when she goes with Katara on this little adventure, she decides to try everything out. And I think it's because she trusts Katara. And I think that the relationship that she has built over time, and just Katara's willingness to do this and be that person for Toph, really matters. So I'm grateful for Katara in light of our conversation today.
I agree. I love that.
Okay. Well, that kind of brings us to the end, and it was just sad, but so it goes. If people want to find you, yeah, if people want to find you and you want them to find you also, how would you want them to do so?
You can find me on all social channels on @candid_Cameron, like Candid Camera, but Cameron, because that's my name. Feel free to find me on those channels. I'm on all of them. And I guess if you want to find me, that's where you can follow posts of my dog and my crazy house projects that I'm still doing, all those things.
Love it. All right, you heard it, folks. Candid_Cameron to find Cameron. You can also find us at BNB_pod on all the things. Join our Facebook group and have a conversation about all these things that you're listening to on the podcast. We'd love to have you. But other than that,
you can find me on that Facebook group also.
Oh, lovely. You can just join us there. All right. Well, in that case, I am thinking that this is the end. So thank you again, Cameron. And until next time, be well and do good.
Thank you. You too.